Have you ever wondered why some of the greatest shows of the 1960s vanished from public memory, while weaker ones became immortalized in reruns? Behind the glamour of television's golden era lies a vault of forgotten brilliance. Stories too daring, too intellectual, or simply too ahead of their time. Today we are reopening that vault. These are the 17 underrated 1960s TV shows you should watch immediately. Number 17, Coronet Blue, 1967. Coronet Blue was a mystery series that came out of nowhere and disappeared just as fast. It told the story of a man who wakes up beaten and half drowned with no memory except the haunting phrase Coronet Blue echoing in his mind. Week after week, he chased clues through the streets of New York while viewers tried to decode the meaning behind those two words. Critics praised its surreal atmosphere and existential tone, but CBS grew nervous. The show was filmed years earlier, then shelved after executives feared its cryptic story would confuse middle America. By the time it finally aired in 1967, the audience had changed. Ratings plummeted, and the mystery was never solved. Behind the scenes, the cast had already moved on, and the show's creator, Larry Cohen, later blamed network executives for killing a masterpiece. Yet, Coronet Blue found new life decades later among cult television fans who saw it as the first truly modern mystery drama. Its ending never came, but perhaps that is the point. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only remembered. Number 16, The Prisoner, 1967. No show of the 1960s dared to challenge authority like The Prisoner. Patrick McGoohan created and starred in this British psychological thriller, where a secret agent resigns from his job only to be kidnapped and trapped in a mysterious coastal village where everyone is known by a number. He becomes number 6, fighting to keep his identity in a place designed to crush it. Audiences were stunned. Critics called it brilliant yet baffling. Each episode mixed espionage with surreal allegory. The final episode caused outrage as millions expected answers, but instead got an abstract rebellion against conformity itself. McGoohan received hate mail and threats from viewers who felt betrayed. Filmed in Portmeirion, Wales, the production was turbulent, with constant rewrites and clashes between McGoohan and the network. Yet, decades later, The Prisoner is hailed as one of the most daring experiments in television history, inspiring later hits like Lost and Twin Peaks. Its message still echoes today. Freedom is not given, it is defended. Number 15, The Invaders, 1967. The Invaders aired on ABC and followed architect David Vincent, who discovers that aliens have infiltrated Earth disguising themselves as humans. Each week he tried to warn others only to be dismissed as paranoid. The show combined Cold War paranoia with science fiction terror, capturing the era's unease about invasion and identity. At first, audiences dismissed it as another sci-fi fad, but soon the Invaders developed a reputation for its eerie tone and sleek production. It mirrored real fears of subversion and control, echoing the suspicion that no one could be trusted, not even your neighbor. Behind the camera creator, Larry Cohen battled with the network over its political undertones. Some insiders claimed government pressure led to toned-down scripts that hinted at mind control and surveillance. Ratings dipped after such censorship, forcing cancellation after 2 seasons. In the years since its demise, the Invaders became a cult legend. Its imagery of glowing alien hands and quiet infiltrators inspired later works from The X-Files to Invasion of the Body Snatchers remakes. In the end, The Invaders was never just about aliens. It was about the fear that the system itself had already been taken over. Number 14, The Wild Wild West, 1965. Imagine James Bond thrown into the Old West armed not with 6 shooters, but secret gadgets hidden in boots wagons and cufflinks. That was The Wild Wild West, a series that fused espionage adventure and steampunk imagination long before the term even existed. Premiering on CBS in 1965, it starred Robert Conrad as secret agent James West and Ross Martin as his ingenious partner, Artemis Gordon. Together, they battled tyrants and mad scientists in a world half frontier and half fantasy. At first, viewers did not know what to make of it. Was it a Western or a spy show or something entirely new? The combination was too strange for purists and too intelligent for its simple adventure seekers. Yet those who understood it saw brilliance. Every episode brimmed with ornate set designs, eccentric villains, and a sly wink towards social satire. Behind the scenes, production was chaotic. Stunts left Conrad repeatedly injured, while censors constantly interfered. CBS demanded less violence, more romance, fewer gadgets, then changed their minds again. But the biggest controversy came when the government criticized the show's violent imagery during the political hearings on television ethics. That pressure led to its cancellation in 1969, despite strong ratings. After it vanished, The Wild Wild West refused to die. It resurfaced in syndication, becoming a cult hit, inspiring countless later works from The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. to the steampunk aesthetic of modern cinema. In truth, The Wild Wild West was too ahead of its time, too visionary for the rules of the 1960s. Today it stands as a reminder that imagination cannot be fenced in by genre or by fear. Number 13, The Outer Limits, 1963. Before The Twilight Zone took the crown of television surrealism, there was The Outer Limits. Premiering in 1963 on ABC, it was the show that taught audiences to fear what they could not understand. Each episode began with the awe-chilling line, "There is nothing wrong with your television set. We are controlling transmission," and from that moment on, viewers were held captive by strange visions. Unlike most anthology shows, The Outer Limits had a soul. It did not just tell monster stories. It told moral stories about power, ambition, and the cost of knowledge. Aliens were metaphors for corruption. Politicians were villains in disguise, and scientists were haunted by the horrors they unleashed. But ABC executives grew frightened of its messages. Episodes that questioned government authority or military experiments were heavily edited. Some were pulled altogether. Writers clashed with censors, and several episodes ended up butchered before air. The network claimed the audience was too confused, yet fans knew better. The show had simply been silenced. Behind the camera, legendary names like Harlan Ellison pushed boundaries far beyond network comfort. His episodes like Demon with a Glass Hand and Soldier would later inspire James Cameron's The Terminator. Despite critical acclaim, the show lasted only 2 seasons before being abruptly canceled. And yet, its echoes remain. The Outer Limits changed what television could be. It introduced darkness, beauty, and philosophy to prime time, and in doing so, paved the way for every ambitious sci-fi show that followed. When you watch it now, you are not watching old television. You are watching the blueprint of the future. Number 12, The Fugitive, 1963. The Fugitive was not just a hit. It was a phenomenon that reshaped serialized storytelling. It told the story of Dr. Richard Kimball, played by David Jansen, a man wrongly accused of murdering his wife and hunted relentlessly across America while searching for the mysterious one-armed man who could prove his innocence. What made it groundbreaking was its realism. Each episode dropped Kimball into new towns, new lives, and moral dilemmas, testing his humanity as much as his endurance. Audiences were riveted by its tension and empathy. Kimball was not a hero or a villain. He was an ordinary man in extraordinary pain, and that made him unforgettable. Yet the show's realism scared the network. Sponsors worried its bleak tone and cynical view of justice would alienate families. Censors often demanded changes to scripts that hinted at corruption or moral ambiguity. Janssen himself grew exhausted filming long nights of running scenes and brooding monologues, yet his weary performance became iconic. The finale in 1967 drew over 78 million viewers, one of the highest ratings in television history. The public needed closure, and they got it when Kimball finally confronted the one-armed man. After its end, The Fugitive became a template for future serialized dramas, from The Incredible Hulk to Breaking Bad. Its legacy is simple, yet eternal. Justice does not always come from courts or authority. Sometimes it is a long, lonely road where the only thing you can trust is your own truth. Number 11, The Time Tunnel, 1966. The Time Tunnel was one of those rare shows that dared to imagine beyond the limits of its decade. Created by Irwin Allen, the master of grand television spectacles, it followed 2 scientists, Tony Newman and Doug Phillips, who became trapped inside a secret government project, allowing them to travel through time but never control where they landed next. Each week, they would tumble into new eras, from ancient Rome to the far future, battling fate and history itself. Audiences were mesmerized by the show's scope and its cinematic ambition. The sets were massive, the effects impressive for their time, and the concept unlike anything television had attempted before. But despite its brilliance, The Time Tunnel was a victim of its own ambition. ABC executives began to fear the mounting budget, as each episode required elaborate costumes and location builds that rivaled big studio productions. The network began cutting corners, forcing Allen to recycle footage and limit historical sequences. Behind the scenes, the cast suffered grueling schedules and last-minute rewrites, as Allen's perfectionism clashed with television deadlines. Critics accused the show of style over substance, but fans saw something deeper. Beneath the time travel adventures was a haunting metaphor for the Cold War itself. Brilliant minds lost in a maze of technology they could not control, while government forces tried to weaponize their discoveries. When ABC canceled the series after just one season, fans were devastated. Its final cliffhanger left Tony and Doug stranded in an unknown century without hope of return. For decades, viewers begged for closure. Though it never came, the legend only grew stronger. The time tunnel may have collapsed in the ratings, but in the hearts of SCI-5 fans, it remains one of television's most visionary experiments, a timeless paradox of imagination and loss. Number 10. Dark Shadows, 1966. At first glance, Dark Shadows looked like a simple daytime soap opera, filled with the usual drama of love, betrayal, and family secrets. But halfway through its first year, something incredible happened. The writers introduced a vampire. His name was Barnabas Collins, and within weeks the entire tone of the show transformed from melodrama to gothic legend. Audiences had never seen anything like it. Airing on weekday afternoons, it became the most bizarre and daring show in daytime history. Teenagers rushed home from school to watch haunted mansions, ghosts and time travel unfold live on television. Jonathan Freed's portrayal of Barnabas turned him into an unexpected icon, and fan clubs formed across America. Yet not everyone celebrated its success. Religious groups protested, calling the show blasphemous for its supernatural themes. Sponsors panicked, fearing they were promoting witchcraft. Network executives demanded that the horror elements be toned down, but creator Dan Curtis refused to surrender his vision. The live filming format also led to chaos behind the scenes, with missed cues, falling props, and forgotten lines often making it to air. Despite these flaws, Dark Shadows became a phenomenon. Its low-budget charm and ambitious storytelling created an entire universe of gothic mythology that would inspire later cult series like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The X-Files. By the time it ended in 1971, it had aired over 1,200 episodes and built one of the most devoted fan bases in television history. Dark Shadows proved that television could be both art and atmosphere, that even in broad daylight darkness could thrive. It was the first true supernatural soap, and the one that reminded America that monsters too could have heartbreak and soul. Number 9. The Avengers, 1961. Long before superhero franchises and cinematic universes, there was The Avengers, a British spy series that redefined cool. Starring Patrick Macnee as the suave secret agent John Steed and Diana Rigg as the unforgettable Emma Peel. It mixed espionage with wit science fiction and avant-garde style. It was more than just television. It was pop art brought to life. Premiering in 1961, it quickly evolved from standard spy fare into something surreal and sophisticated. Each episode balanced deadly plots with playful banter and surreal imagery. Emma Peel fought villains in leather catsuits while Steed battled masterminds with charm and umbrella in hand. Together, they embodied a new kind of partnership, one based on equality, intellect, and charm, something unheard of in early 60s television. But its subversive nature made British broadcasters uneasy. Some critics accused the show of glamorizing violence and rebellion, especially with a woman sharing equal footing with a man in a genre dominated by male heroes. Episodes featuring bizarre cults or mind control were sometimes censored or pulled from American syndication for being too strange or suggestive. Behind the scenes, Diana Rigg faced pay inequality and nearly quit after discovering her male co-star earned far more. When she finally left the show after 2 seasons, her absence broke the hearts of fans worldwide. Though The Avengers ended in the early 70s, its influence stretched across decades. It shaped later icons from James Bond to Kill Bill and inspired countless parodies and homages. Stylish, fearless, and delightfully eccentric, it remains proof that television could blend sophistication and subversion with a wink. The Avengers was not just entertainment, it was rebellion disguised as elegance, and every frame whispered one message: be clever, be bold, and never obey the ordinary. Number 8. The Saint, 1962. The Saint was a television phenomenon that merged charm, danger, and wit into one unforgettable figure. Roger Moore starred as Simon Templar, the suave gentleman adventurer who lived between heroism and crime. Long before he became James Bond, he perfected that role here with a halo-shaped logo marking his presence and an eyebrow lift that could disarm any villain. Premiering in 1962, The Saint was based on Leslie Charteris's pulp novels, but Moore elevated the material into something cinematic. Each episode sent him across glamorous European cities, stealing from the corrupt and helping the innocent. It was Robin Hood meets the Cold War, and audiences adored it. Yet the series never got the respect it deserved. Critics dismissed it as lightweight adventure, ignoring how it redefined television pacing and visual storytelling. Behind the scenes, Roger Moore battled with grueling shooting schedules and constant rewrites. He often directed episodes himself under pseudonyms when directors fell behind. The production was expensive for the era, with frequent location shoots and elaborate stunts that rivaled major films. Network executives grew uneasy with its cost, and with Moore's growing creative control. Some episodes even ran into censorship trouble for their critique of political corruption or depiction of foreign governments. At one point, the BBC briefly pulled an episode over concerns it mirrored an actual political scandal. Moore laughed it off, but the controversy helped build the show's cult reputation. By the time it ended in 1969, The Saint had become an international success, though not yet recognized as art. Only years later did critics realize how it bridged the gap between classic adventure and the modern spy thriller. It taught television that a smirk could be as powerful as a gun, and that style itself could tell a story. Number 7. The Man from UNCLE, 1964. Before the world knew of MI6 or cinematic secret agents with gadgets and martinis, there was UNCLE, a shadowy international agency where good and evil collided with mid-century cool. The Man from UNCLE debuted in 1964 and instantly captured imaginations with its blend of espionage, glamour, and humor. Robert Vaughn played the calculating American agent Napoleon Solo, while David McCallum became a surprise heartthrob as the quiet Russian agent Ilya Kuryakin. Together they embodied Cold War unity in a world built on suspicion. The show's concept was daring for its time. At the height of political tension between East and West, television audiences were asked to cheer for an American and a Soviet working side by side. Some networks panicked, fearing public backlash. NBC censors demanded that scripts avoid overt political commentary. Writers were forced to hide subversive messages inside campy plots involving supervillains and mind control devices. Behind the cameras, chaos reigned. Producers feuded over tone, some wanting gritty realism, others pushing for surreal adventure. By the third season, the show tilted towards satire, alienating older viewers. Even as teenagers fell in love with its style, the network interference became unbearable, and the series was abruptly canceled in 1968. But its afterlife was immense. Decades later, it inspired countless parodies and homages, from Austin Powers to Kingsman. David McCallum's character became a cult icon of quiet rebellion, while Robert Vaughn's suave delivery became the template for modern secret agents. The Man from UNCLE taught audiences that intelligence and irony could share the same screen, and that unity, even fictional unity, was a weapon stronger than fear. Number 6. The Addams Family, 1964. The Addams Family began as a series of macabre New Yorker cartoons, and became one of the most subversive sitcoms of the decade. Premiering in 1964, it turned the traditional American family upside down. Gomez, Morticia, Wednesday Pugsley, and Uncle Fester lived in a Gothic mansion celebrating everything society called strange. But instead of being villains, they were loving, cheerful, and oddly wholesome. Audiences were divided. Some adored its dark humor, others found it disturbing. Critics called it tasteless, while teenagers found it liberating. The show dared to laugh at death consumerism and suburban conformity at a time when America was terrified of change. Each episode poked fun at what people called normal life, and revealed how absurd that normality truly was. Behind the laughter, there was friction. The network wanted broader humor, while creator David Levy and producer Nat Perrin pushed for satire. The stars John Astin and Carolyn Jones developed a romantic chemistry that was too bold for prime time, and executives often tried to tone it down. Rumors spread that the network feared religious backlash due to the show's fascination with the macabre. Ratings started strong, but declined when rival series like The Munsters entered the scene. In 1966, The Addams Family was canceled, leaving fans heartbroken. Yet the characters never truly died. The reruns became cult treasures, and every generation rediscovered their eerie charm through animated versions and film adaptations. Today, the show is celebrated for its wit and subversion. It taught that being different is not a curse, but a kind of freedom. In a decade obsessed with image, the Addams Family proudly refused to fit in, and that is exactly why they endure. Number 5. The Twilight Zone, 1959. Though it premiered at the tail end of the 1950s, The Twilight Zone defined the spirit of the 1960s and changed the way television told stories. Created by Rod Serling, it was not merely a show, It was a warning, a reflection, and a mirror held to humanity's fears. Each episode invited viewers into worlds where logic fractured and morality was tested, often ending with an unnerving twist that forced self-examination. Audiences initially approached it with skepticism. Many executives believed viewers would not understand its cerebral tone. Sponsors wanted more optimism, less philosophy. But Serling insisted on challenging them through allegory and imagination. His tales of aliens' prejudice and totalitarian societies spoke directly about racism, war, and conformity, but wrapped safely in science fiction disguise. The production itself was a battlefield. Serling fought censors every week to preserve the show's moral bite. Episodes criticizing government power or military arrogance were repeatedly softened, yet Serling found ways to sneak his truths past the gatekeepers, using metaphors that made the audience think long after the screen went black. The Twilight Zone was both a creative triumph and a personal toll on Serling, who poured his soul into scripts that questioned existence itself. When the series ended in 1964, it had produced some of the greatest stories ever broadcast, from Eye of the Beholder to Time Enough at Last. Its legacy is eternal. Every anthology show that followed owes a debt to Serling's vision. The Twilight Zone did more than entertain. It awakened the audience's conscience and whispered that the monsters were never just out there, they were within us. Number 4. Hogan's Heroes, 1965. When Hogan's Heroes premiered, it immediately drew controversy. A sitcom set inside a World War II prisoner of war camp sounded like madness. How could anyone laugh at such a setting? Yet audiences tuned in by the millions, drawn to its daring mix of humor and subversion. The show followed Colonel Hogan and his team of Allied prisoners, who used the camp as a secret base for sabotage right under the nose of their bumbling German captors. Critics were initially appalled, but viewers found it brilliant. It turned war into farce, revealing the absurdity of tyranny through laughter. Bob Crane's charm carried the show, while Werner Klemperer's performance as the vain Colonel Klink became legendary. But behind the laughter, the production carried shadows. Klemperer himself was a Jewish refugee whose family fled Nazi Germany, and he agreed to play Klink only if the Germans were always portrayed as fools. Controversy never stopped. Some veterans groups protested, claiming it mocked wartime suffering. Sponsors debated pulling out, while the network defended its satire as a statement about resilience and rebellion. Yet, week after week, Hogan's Heroes topped ratings charts, proving that humor could defy fear. Behind the scenes, tensions flared. Crane's personal life later became tabloid tragedy after the show's end, but during production, he was known for his meticulous timing and perfectionism. By the time it concluded in 1971, it had become one of the longest-running comedies of its decade. Hogan's Heroes taught television a rare lesson, that even in darkness, laughter could be a weapon of defiance. It mocked power without cruelty and turned one of history's darkest chapters into an anthem of human cunning and survival. Number 3. Get Smart, 1965. Before spy parodies became an industry, there was Get Smart, the brainchild of Mel Brooks and Buck Henry. It took the sleek world of James Bond and turned it inside out, with pratfalls, catchphrases, and gadgets that never worked as intended. Don Adams starred as Maxwell Smart, Agent 86 of Control, who blundered through missions, yet somehow always saved the day. When it debuted in 1965, audiences roared with laughter, but critics failed to grasp how revolutionary it was. Beneath the comedy lay a sharp critique of bureaucracy, espionage, and blind obedience. Every malfunctioning shoe phone or exploding briefcase was a jab at Cold War paranoia. Network executives tried to interfere, wanting to soften the political satire, but Brooks and Henry refused. Their humor was precise and fearless, mocking both sides of the ideological divide. NBC grew nervous about offending government agencies, but the creators pressed on, using absurdity to reveal truth. Behind the scenes, the production was chaos organized by genius. Addams rehearsed relentlessly to perfect his deadpan timing, while Barbara Feldon brought grace and intelligence to Agent 99, redefining women's roles in comedy. The chemistry between them turned slapstick into art. Get Smart went on to win multiple Emmy Awards and became one of television's greatest comedies. It showed that wit and intelligence could coexist with laughter, and that courage could hide beneath clumsiness. Even decades later, Maxwell Smart remains a cultural icon. Every time he mutters, "Would you believe it?" he reminds us that sometimes the world's greatest defense against insanity is a good laugh. In an era ruled by fear, Get Smart dared to laugh back. Number 2. Mission Impossible, 1966. When Mission Impossible premiered on CBS, in 1966, it redefined television suspense. Every episode opened with that unforgettable self-destructing tape and a simple command: your mission, should you choose to accept it. What followed was not violence or glamour, but precision. The impossible mission's force used deception technology and teamwork to dismantle dictators and criminals without ever firing a gun. Created by Bruce Geller, the show was meticulously crafted like a chess game. Each episode was a puzzle, and every move mattered. Audiences were captivated by its seriousness, its lack of humor, and its airtight tension. But that same intelligence made some executives nervous. CBS feared it was too complex for casual viewers and demanded simpler storylines. Geller refused, and constant clashes followed behind the camera. The show's perfectionism came at a cost. Cast members worked through nights rehearsing intricate scenes, while Lalo Schifrin's iconic score gave the show its relentless rhythm. Peter Graves became the face of stoic leadership as Jim Phelps, while Martin Landau and Barbara Bain brought elegance and mystery. Yet, despite awards and acclaim, Mission Impossible nearly collapsed under production pressure. The scripts were rewritten constantly as Geller battled networks that wanted formula over artistry. Some episodes brushed dangerously close to political commentary, using its fictional nations to critique real-world espionage and manipulation. That subtle defiance drew government concern, according to rumors among the crew. When the series ended in 1973, it left behind a legend rather than a finale. Its spirit would later be reborn through film, but the original show remains a monument to precision storytelling. Mission Impossible proved that intelligence could thrill audiences more than explosions. It was not just television, it was controlled chaos masquerading as order, and it forever changed the grammar of action storytelling. Number 1, Star Trek, 1966. Star Trek began as a modest NBC science fiction series that almost no one believed in. Created by Gene Roddenberry, it was pitched as Wagon Train to the Stars. But what emerged was something far grander. The voyages of the Starship Enterprise represented not just exploration of space, but of humanity itself. Each episode dared to confront race war class and morality in ways no network had attempted before. When it premiered in 1966, critics were confused. Some saw a children's adventure, others saw propaganda for utopian ideals. What they missed was its bravery. Star Trek placed a black woman, an Asian man, and a Russian officer together on a bridge in the middle of the Cold War and made them equals. That was revolutionary. Behind the scenes, it was a war for survival. NBC executives constantly battled Roddenberry over budget and content. Episodes about racism and imperialism were censored or delayed. Actor tensions were constant, and William Shatner's ego became legendary. Yet the cast remained united by purpose, believing they were building something more than entertainment. Ratings never reflected its cultural power. By 1969, it was canceled, but its afterlife was miraculous. Through syndication reruns and conventions, Star Trek became a global phenomenon. It birthed generations of scientists, writers, and dreamers who believed the future could be built not through conquest, but curiosity. Star Trek was more than a show, it was a philosophy. It whispered that diversity was strength and that imagination could be humanity's greatest weapon. It was not just the story of the Enterprise, it was the story of us. 17 shows, 17 visions of a daring decade. Each one broke the rules to make television something greater than noise. These stories were not forgotten. They were buried waiting for rediscovery. Which of these classics do you think deserves revival? Tell us in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more journeys into the lost worlds of television history.